Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to take a final look at the Week 5 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. We're going to take a final look at this slate and go position by position, talk about the players that stand out to me the most. I'm recording this video on Friday, so these are pretty much my final thoughts. We've got most of the injury news that we need for the week. There's still some questionable guys, like Julio Jones is one of the big ones that we'll have to watch. But we got word that, Lamar's back at practice. He's going to be good to go. I'm not too worried about some other guys like Kareem Hunt. He's expected to play. Mixon, these guys are expected to play. Really, it's just, Julio Jones is the big question mark for this week. We'll need to watch that heading into Sunday. Like I said, recording this video on Friday, so we haven't gotten, full update yet on Julio. But we'll be sure to, keep track of that heading into Sunday. But yeah, we're just going to go through each position, really talk about the players that I like most this week. I'm not going to, talk about every single player. I don't want this video to be, an hour long, so I really just want to hit on the guys that I feel like I'm going to have, the most exposure to in my lineups. We'll look at DraftKings pricing. We'll talk about some guys I like there. We'll look at Yahoo pricing as well. We'll hit on guys I do like over on Yahoo too. But before we do get started, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel, if you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button as well. I am uploading a ton of NFL content throughout the week, so I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, and be sure to click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy my YouTube videos, and if they do really help you, I have more content available on Patreon. You can check that out, link down below in the description. You can get access to my NFL content during baseball season. I do post baseball content over there. NBA's winding down, but I did have NBA content going up on Patreon as well. So I do cover a lot of sports over on Patreon. Do provide a lot of additional stuff over there. If you want to check it out, as always, it's optional. It is linked down below in the description. But let's go ahead and look at quarterback for this week. Start off at the top of the position. Lamar Jackson at the top here. I think if I'm going to be paying up at quarterback this week for like any of these 7K and above guys, I think Lamar is my favorite play at 7,900. I know he has not been that great so far this season. He's really only had one decent game. I guess you could say two decent games. Week 1 against the Browns, he did put up 27 DK points. Week 4, last week against Washington, he had 26 DK points. But he was really disappointing against KC in a pretty good spot. He was really disappointing against Houston in a pretty good spot as well. Gets another good matchup this week at home against the Bengals. I do like Lamar a lot this week. I think with how poorly he's been so far this season, I don't see a ton of people paying up for him. I think people might go to some other guys, like maybe, a Patrick Mahomes or a Dak Prescott. Dak's been awesome this season. Even like Deshaun Watson's in a really good spot, and he's $1,000 less. I don't see Lamar being too popular. I do like Lamar a lot as a pay-up option. If we look at Yahoo's pricing, I think that's where Lamar looks the best. If you look at their pricing, you can see that he's priced all the way down here at $36. They have, kind of adjusted his price for the fact that he's been so bad. He's cheaper than Dak. He's cheaper than Mahomes. He's cheaper than Kyler Murray. That Sunday night game between the Vikings and Seahawks is on the Yahoo main slate, and, Lamar's also cheaper than Russell Wilson. So I actually like Lamar a ton on Yahoo. I think at $36, that's where it's like the easiest to get him in, easiest to build around him. I am for sure going to have him in my main lineup. I just think he's too cheap on Yahoo. He should be priced up there with guys like Mahomes, Murray. He should be like $40 on Yahoo. We're getting him in a big discount in a good matchup against the Bengals. I definitely like Lamar here. I think if the Bengals can keep up with the Ravens, if they can put points on the board, we should see Lamar, with his full workload, should be throwing the ball, should have plenty of rushing attempts as well. Even if the Ravens do get a lead, which they are expected to. I mean, they're big home favorites right now. We know they'll still run Lamar a good amount in the second half, even when they do have a lead. I like Lamar a lot at 7,900. In my opinion, this is still, one of the highest upside QBs in the league. He's, in my opinion, the highest upside guy. Like, if there's anyone that can go out there and put up, 40 DraftKings points, it's going to be Lamar Jackson. Like, he has the potential to go for, 100-plus rushing yards, can throw for 250 yards, gives you that massive ceiling. So, really like Lamar at the top. I think Mahomes and Prescott are definitely viable as well. Dak Prescott I do like here against the Giants. I mean, Dak's just been so good this season. I know the Cowboys have been playing from behind a lot recently, which is one of the reasons, he's had such big games. I mean, he threw the ball 58 times against Cleveland, 57 times against the Seahawks, 47 times against the Falcons. This is not a spot where you would expect Dallas to be playing from behind. I mean, they should easily be able to beat this Giants team. But I still do like Dak a lot here. It's a really good matchup. It's a high total game. Right now, this game does have, I believe, one of the higher totals on the slate. if I'm not mistaken. It has a 54 total, so one of the highest on the slate. Really good spot for Dak. I think you can definitely look to him as well. Him and Lamar are probably my two favorite pay-up options if I'm going like above 7K. Once you get under 7K though, I do like Deshaun Watson a lot this week against the Jags. I think for tournaments he makes plenty of sense. Watson was actually really popular last week, and he kind of came through late. He had a really disappointing first half, but came through late in the second half, had 2 touchdowns late in the game, finished with 23.9 DK points, just got the 300-yard bonus on DK, which obviously helped. Look, it's another good spot this week. I liked him a lot last week because the matchup was so good at home against Minnesota. Now he gets the Jaguars at home. This Jaguars defense is not one that we should be afraid of. Should definitely be looking to attack them. Really good spot for the Texans. Another high total game. Another game that you expect, probably shoots out. I believe this game actually, it also has a 54 total. So definitely like Deshaun Watson. I think on Yahoo he looks really good. He's very cheap over there, just $30. Definitely like him at that Yahoo salary. We know Watson's another one of those guys that, has rushing upside. Doesn't have the rushing upside that like Lamar does or that Kyler Murray does. But Dak, Watson, these are two guys that, can give you 40, 50 rushing yards if, things go their way. So I like both those guys a good amount this week. Matt Ryan, though, he was the guy that I talked about in my first look video, and I think I still am going to be going with Matt Ryan in my main lineup most likely. Just at 6,100, I think that's too cheap of a price tag for Ryan when you factor in the home matchup against the Panthers. Look, I know the Falcons have been disappointing lately. These last 2 games, they just haven't looked great at all. It's been kind of 2 tough matchups, though, like against the Bears and then on the road in Green Bay. Now they get to go back home and to face a really bad Panthers defense, a Panthers team that we definitely want to pick on. The spot's just so good for Matt Ryan. Like, this is a guy that most weeks he's going to throw for 300-plus yards, especially if the Falcons are playing from behind, which could be the case this week. The Panthers have been playing much better on the offensive end. I could see them putting up points here. Another game that, is very likely to shoot out, does have a very high total. Spot's just really good for Matt Ryan, and the price tag, I think that's what really gets me in. If he was like 6,700, 6,800, I think I'd be, kind of questioning it a bit. But at 6,100, it's really hard for him to fail at this salary when you factor in how good this matchup is, the likelihood that this game shoots out. This is already a Falcons team that throws the ball a ton. Even if they're playing from ahead, they'll still throw the ball. I like Matt Ryan a lot. I think he's just too cheap on DraftKings. 6,100, he looks like one of the better options in that mid-range. I like him on Yahoo as well. He's $29. He's pretty cheap over there too, but he's not as necessary because you have Deshaun Watson for only $1 more. If you can find the salary to get up to Lamar, I do like doing that as well. I don't mind Ryan on Yahoo, but I think DraftKings at 6,100, that's where he really stands out this week. And even on the other side of that game, I think Teddy Bridgewater looks really good at 5,900. Definitely someone I want to have interest in, or I'm going to have interest in tournaments. Going to have some exposure to in my tournament lineups. I don't think he's going to be like in my main lineup or in my cash game lineup, but tournaments, I do have interest in Bridgewater, especially, if I'm trying to stack up this game, which I will for sure be doing. You can stack up Bridgewater and Robbie Anderson and then like run it back with, maybe Calvin Ridley or Todd Gurley, who's in a good spot, or even Zacchaeus. He could be a really good value play this week if Julio winds up out. So I do like Teddy Bridgewater, 5,900. He was really disappointing to start the season, but he did bounce back last week against the Cardinals, did have a really good game. I would expect him to keep that up, this week in another great matchup against the Falcons. Definitely like Teddy Bridgewater as a value. And, there's some other guys down here you could play. Like, I don't mind Daniel Jones at 5,400. If you just want to completely punt the position, Kyle Allen's going to be starting for Washington this week, and he's only 4,100. I mean, it's really hard for a quarterback to fail at 4,100. Like, even if he gets you 14 points, he's probably not killing you at that salary. So I guess you could go there. Daniel Jones, I do have some interest in, though. Just a really good matchup against Dallas. The best spot by far the Giants have been in is going to be this week. I mean, they have had some really tough matchups so far against the Steelers, the Bears, the 49ers, the Rams. Now they get to go into Dallas in a likely shootout and play against a really bad Dallas defense. So pretty good spot for Daniel Jones. I do have interest in him as a value. But I think we covered quarterback. Let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. So I think at the top, Zeke is clearly the top play at running back for me this week. 7,800 on DraftKings is still too cheap in my opinion. I know Zeke, we haven't gotten that massive game from him yet, but his floor is just so high. Like, I think in cash games, you're just locking in Zeke. He should be one of the first guys in your lineup in cash games. Even for tournaments, I would want to have a lot of exposure to Zeke just because I think the upside is there. This is a spot where we could definitely see Zeke go for 100-plus rushing yards and multiple touchdowns. He has got a touchdown so far 3 out of their 4 games. He didn't score last week, but he still gave you 21 DK points. Like, that just shows you the massive floor that Zeke has, even in a game where the Browns are playing from behind, or even in a game, where the Cowboys are playing from behind. Cowboys were trailing for a lot this game. They just didn't look great to begin with. Zeke still managed to get 21 DK points, 12 carries, 54 yards. Obviously not great, but really good work in the passing game. 8 catches for 71 yards. He's just going to get so much volume. He's going to get 15 to 20 carries, maybe even more if they're playing with a lead. Even if they're playing from behind, which is unlikely here, but if they are, they'll still involve Zeke in the passing game. He's getting a ton of usage in the passing game. He is clearly their number one back, going to do everything, going to be on the field a ton. And the price tag is just too low in my opinion. Like, Zeke should be priced up to like $9K, especially for this matchup. Home favorite against a bad Giants team. Hard not to like Zeke this week. Pretty easy to build around him at 7,800. I think he's clearly, one of the top plays at the running back position. On Yahoo, I do like him a lot as well. But we're going to talk about a couple mid-range running backs that I think are way too cheap over there. Those are the 2 guys I like most, but obviously you could play Zeke in the flex if you want to go that route, which is most likely what I'll be doing. But now let's talk about some of these mid-range options. I think there's a lot of viable plays here. We'll start off with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 6,800 against the Raiders. Really good spot for CEH. This Raiders defense against the run has been pretty bad so far this season. Clyde Edwards-Helaire feels like another guy that's just, maybe a tad bit too cheap. Should probably be like 7,200, 7,300 for this matchup. Now we're getting him at just 6,800, which I think is, a pretty good discount. He's clearly the number 1 running back for the Chiefs, getting all the work, getting 20 touches a week, 19 touches last week against the Patriots, 25 touches against the Ravens, 16 against the Chargers. Like, the workload's going to be there. He gets work in the passing game. He's going to be in there, if they get down to the goal line. I know he hasn't scored, or he's only scored 1 touchdown so far this season. I think we're going to see eventually, a game where Clyde Edwards-Helaire maybe gets a couple goal line touchdowns. If that could be this week, and once some touchdown variance starts going his way, he's going to put up some massive games. So I definitely like CEH at 6,800. I think if you want to pair him with Zeke, that makes a ton of sense. I really like Kareem Hunt as well, and I think Kareem Hunt actually might be somewhat lower owned this week. It is a tough matchup against the Colts, but without Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb's already been put on IR. He's going to be out for at least, I think, like 4 to 6 weeks is what they said. It's going to be Kareem Hunt's backfield, while Nick Chubb is out. I expect him to get a large majority of the work. I know some people are worried that maybe Dearness Johnson could take some carries away. I don't think Dearness Johnson is going to be that involved, though. He's not going to be nearly as involved as he was last week. Last week, the Browns had a big lead. They really didn't need to push Kareem Hunt. They were playing from ahead for pretty much every part of that game. They had a 2-touchdown lead for almost the entire game. I know Kareem Hunt was coming into that game a little hobbled as well, but he should be full go this week. He said after that game that he was, he felt good. I know he got limited in Thursday's practice, but I'm not too worried about that. He's going to play this week. Love Kareem Hunt here, and especially if his ownership is going to be a little bit lower because of the tough matchup. Like, if people are going to go to CEH, obviously I like CEH this week. I think given the ownership discount, though, I would probably rather play Hunt. Even Mike Davis in that same price range might get some ownership. So for me, I'd rather go to Hunt if he's going to be lower owned. I think his upside is through the roof, especially now that this is going to be his backfield without Nick Chubb. Like Hunt a ton, and then if we do look over on Yahoo, these are some of the mid-range guys I've talked about. Like Kareem Hunt on Yahoo is only $18. It's going to be really hard to get away from him at that salary. I think he's clearly one of the top plays on Yahoo. We're going to talk about Mike Davis in a second. He is also way too cheap over there. So really like Kareem Hunt on both sides. He's probably one of my favorite plays overall this week, especially if he's going to be lower owned. I mean, this is a guy that has 20-plus touch upside now that Chubb's out. Should get probably anywhere from 14 to 15 carries. Should get some work in the passing game as well. We know Kareem Hunt's a really good pass-catching back. Even in a tough matchup, I think there's plenty of upside for him. So really like Kareem Hunt. Mike Davis as well, I think, is in a great spot this week against the Falcons. And, just the last 2 weeks without Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis has played incredibly well, getting a ton of volume, getting great usage in the passing game, which is something we like to see. And, just throughout the past few years, this Falcons team has really struggled to defend pass-catching running backs. Likely shootout. Really just all the boxes are checked for Mike Davis. I guess the only thing is his price is coming up. He is $6,400. But with how well he's played, I mean, you could argue that that's still a little bit too cheap. Mike Davis should probably be up there like $6,700, $6,800. I think he's a really good play as well. I think he's going to get a lot of ownership, so That's why I do prefer Kareem Hunt if he's going to be lower owned. But Davis looks like a great play. Love him on Yahoo. I mean, he's just way too cheap over there. Like, he's the same price tag as Melvin Gordon. Obviously, that game, got postponed, but that just kind of shows you the pricing. Like, he's cheaper than Jerick McKinnon. He's cheaper than, Mark Ingram, Kenyon Drake. Like, I would definitely take Mike Davis over all those guys. Davis just getting so much usage, pass game work, getting carries. He's their goal line back. He's pretty much their workhorse running back right now. And for $19 on Yahoo, I mean, that's just way too cheap for a good matchup against the Falcons. So, love Mike Davis, love Kareem Hunt. I think Davis is a great play on Draftkings as well. But it's just trying to figure out which one of those mid-range running backs you're going to go to. I think you're definitely, especially for cash games, you're definitely playing Zeke in cash games. Then it just comes down to, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mike Davis, Kareem Hunt. Like, which of those three are you going to go to? If you're going to play, two of those three, which two of those three are you going to play? I think, even in cash games, if he's going to be lower owned, I still wouldn't mind playing Kareem Hunt, even in the tough matchup. I just think with him getting so much, with him getting the volume now with Nick Chubb out, the upside, it's definitely there for Kareem Hunt. So that's my thoughts on those mid-range guys. I mean, there's some other plays you could target, like Josh Jacobs. I think, could have some upside here against the Chiefs. A little bit worried if they get from behind, if they have to play from behind, will they take Josh Jacobs out? I wouldn't think so, but I always have a little bit of concern about that. If the Raiders do get from behind, Jacobs tends to be not as involved as he normally would be. But like Todd Gurley against the Panthers, for tournaments, I think Gurley makes some sense just because the matchup is so good. The Panthers' run defense, one of the worst in the league. They were dead last against the run last season. Don't expect much to change this year. Definitely have interest in Gurley at 5,700. I think David Johnson looks really, really good as a value, only 5,200 at home against the Jaguars. Like, this is a fantastic spot for David Johnson. I like the matchup a lot last week, and although, he was kind of disappointing, only got 16 carries, so good volume, but just 63 rushing yards. Didn't get much work in the passing game, 3 targets, 2 catches for 29 yards. He's clearly their number one back, though. He's going to get the volume, 18 touches, 15 touches, 13, 14 touches. Like, he's going to get anywhere from 15 to 20 touches. I think there is upside for him to get, more than that, especially if he's playing well. Going to be their goal line back, too. Like, if they get down to the goal line, David Johnson is going to be punching it in. I'm pretty sure last week he had a couple opportunities to get a goal line touchdown. He got stuffed on both those opportunities. He could have easily scored last week and didn't. There's going to be a game, sooner rather than later, like week 1, where, DJ gets 70 yards, 4 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown, and puts up 20, 22 DK points. At 5,200, I think with that price coming down, given the really good matchup, I mean, we saw this Jags team just got absolutely torched by Joe Mixon last week. I really like this spot for David Johnson. I think he's a really good value. He's one of the guys I do like for cheap as a running back play. There isn't much value at running back this week, but DJ at 5,200, I do have a good amount of interest in. I think Antonio Gibson for tournaments makes some sense. I mean, he's just getting the volume right now. 13 carries, 5 targets last week. I mean, he is clearly their number one running back. We kind of saw it to begin the year, they were involving Peyton Barber, they were involving J.D. McKissick, but in my opinion, Gibson's their number one guy, going to get the large majority of the work. 5K, could be a guy you look to for cheap. I think I feel a little bit better about David Johnson just because I like his matchup more, but I don't mind Gibson. But really, other than that, I think I pretty much covered, running back. So let's go ahead and move on to the receiver position. So at receiver this week, we do have viable options at the top here. I think if I'm paying up, my favorite guy to go to is definitely Calvin Ridley. I really like Calvin Ridley this week. I'm assuming that Julio is going to be out. We haven't gotten that news yet. I don't think we've gotten any update. It says right here that he's going to test his hamstring with some running drills during Friday's practice. They're going to decide then if he is going to be able to go or not. Look, because this guy's so injury prone, I'm just going to assume that Julio doesn't play. Obviously, if Julio does play and he's not limited, I mean, you could obviously pay it for him at 6,800. But just assuming Julio's out, I think we are definitely going to want to have some Calvin Ridley. Honestly, with Julio out, I don't know if that even really helps Ridley much. But he's still clearly going to get massive volume. I know last week he put up a complete donut, 5 targets, 0 catches. Look, he's going to bounce back this week for sure. 100% going to bounce back this week. I mean, the matchup is just so good. Getting the Falcons back at home, I think, is really key. This is a team that has always played really, really well at home, has always been able to put up points at home in the Dome. And with this game having such a high total, the very likelihood that it shoots out, I mean, Calvin really has a monster upside this week. definitely like stacking him with Matt Ryan if you can find the salary to do so. I know Ridley is very expensive, but there's some good value this week. We'll talk about some other value plays I like at receiver. There's some cheap tight ends you can go to. Should be pretty easy to pay up for Ridley, and he's my favorite pay up option at the top of the receiver position. Just love the matchup for him against this Panthers secondary. I mean, they are so beatable. Definitely a team you can attack, and really good spot for Calvin Ridley. Great bounce back week for him. I'm expecting a huge game from Ridley, so I like him a lot at the top. You could obviously play DeAndre Hopkins. Amari Cooper's been awesome this year. You could obviously play him. But because I like Matt Ryan so much, I think it does make sense to stack him up with Calvin Ridley. Those are two guys I really like a lot this week. But like Tyreek Hill, I don't mind against the Raiders. I think there's definitely upside for Hill against this Raiders secondary, easily a beatable secondary. Obviously Julio, if he does play at 6,800, I mean that is too cheap for Julio if he's healthy. But I'm just going to assume that he doesn't play. We'll have to keep an eye on that though, throughout the week and heading up to Sunday. Will Fuller, someone I do want to talk about. So his price is coming up. He is up to 6,600 on DraftKings, which is a pretty hefty price tag to pay for Will Fuller. But the guy has the upside, man. Like we saw it last week, 6 catches, over 100 yards and a touchdown. Like this is clearly the number one receiver right now for the Texans. Should get the large majority of the volume. I mean, I think 8 to 10 targets feels like a pretty good projection for him most weeks. Really good matchup as well against a very beatable Jaguar secondary. At 6,600, I don't think I'm going to be playing him too much at that price. Really, the only way I would play him is if I was stacking him up with Deshaun Watson, if I was doing that in tournaments. But if we do look over on Yahoo, Will Fuller is actually really cheap over there. He's only $19. Like I think at that price tag, you could definitely consider him for cash games. I think he's just too cheap for being the number one receiver for an explosive Texans offense that should put up points this week in a very likely shootout against a bad Jaguars defense. Love Will Fuller at just $19 on Yahoo. I think that's where he looks most appealing. DraftKings, you could definitely play him, but at his expensive price of $6,600, he would be more reserved for tournaments. Whereas at $19 on Yahoo, I think he's in cash game consideration at that price tag. But another guy that I really like, we'll talk about his Yahoo price, Marquise Brown, $6,300. He's another guy that is a little bit expensive, but I think there's a lot of upside for him this week against the Bengals. I'm pretty sure he did have a monster game against the Bengals last year, or maybe that was Lamar that did. I can't remember honestly. But we know this is a very high upside receiver, gonna get the volume, even though this Ravens team is not a team that throws the ball much. Brown should be locked in for about 7 to 8 targets a week. It's a very beatable Bengals defense, very beatable secondary. A lot of upside for Marquise Brown. I think in tournaments he's going to be pretty low owned because he's still expensive. He's 6,300. Even after some disappointing games these last few weeks, he is still kind of priced up. So at 6,300 in tournaments, I do have interest in Marquise Brown. But if we look at Yahoo once again, this is another guy that I just think is way too cheap. Only $15, really nicely priced. You can easily get him and Lamar. You can easily stack those two guys up, and it's not going to cost you too much salary either. I think at Marquise Brown's price of $15, like he is definitely in cash game consideration for me. Most likely, I'm going to be stacking him up with Lamar in my main lineup. I just really like both those guys a ton on Yahoo. I think both are underpriced, and you can still fit in some really good plays. Like if you go with these 5 guys, you still got $23 remaining per player. So you could probably pay up for another running back to play in the flex, like a Zeke. You could probably pay up at receiver. You might have to play a cheap tight end, but we'll talk about some cheap tight ends I like. I'm always going to punt defense, so just play a cheap defense, and you got a lot of salary to work with. So I definitely like going to Marquise Brown at that Yahoo salary. I think $15 just way too cheap. In cash game consideration for me at that price. On DraftKings at $6,300, I'd probably be more reserved for tournaments. Don't think I would get there in cash games. But some other guys in this price range, like DJ Moore, $6K, I have interest in this week. I expect him to bounce back sooner rather than later. I was really high on him last week, and he disappointed against the Cardinals, but gets another good spot against a pretty bad Falcons team and a pretty bad Falcons secondary. So I do like DJ Moore. CeeDee Lamb is clearly the number 2 receiver for the Cowboys right now. At $6K against the Giants, I like him a good amount. Robbie Anderson against the Falcons, he's been the number 1 receiver so far this season for the Panthers, getting almost double-digit targets a week. Honestly, he should probably be more expensive than DJ Moore, so I think, Robbie Anderson at $5,900, he honestly feels like the safer play than DJ Moore just because his volume is so secure right now. I like both guys a ton, but if I had to choose one, I probably would go with Robbie Anderson. I do like Anderson quite a bit at $5,900. Michael Gallup, I think, is in play for tournaments. wouldn't go to him like in cash or anything. I feel better with guys like, you know, Amari and CD Lamb just because they've been more consistent, have put up better numbers. But Gallup, we know, still has upside. We saw that week 3 against Seattle, 28 DK points. Like, this is still a guy that can easily go for, you know, 100 plus yards and could get you a touchdown. Has that kind of upside. 5,400. His price is coming way down, you know, because he's been so bad recently. I don't think I'd completely, you know, jump off him though. I would definitely have him in tournament lineups, especially if I'm like playing Dak and I want to stack him up. I would definitely look to stack him up with Michael Gallup, given that salary. You know, if Julio doesn't play, I think Russell Gage at 5,100 makes a lot of sense. You could definitely go to Russell Gage if Julio is out. I talked about him in my first look video. Under 5K, though, for value receivers, that's a couple guys I want to hit on. I think Darius Slayton at 4,800 is too cheap for a really good matchup against the Cowboys. Like, even in some tough spots recently, he's still getting good volume, going to get the looks. Now he gets a really good matchup against the Cowboys. You know, I said it earlier, the Giants have been in some pretty tough matchups so far this season. It's been a pretty rough schedule for them. You know, these first 4 games, Steelers, Bears, 49ers, Rams. Well, now they get the Cowboys, a team that has just been so bad defensively this season, a team that, you know, at home tends to put up points, so you would expect the Giants to be playing from behind, probably going to have to throw a ton. This game does have shootout potential, like I said earlier. Definitely like Darius Slayton at 4,800. I think he looks like a pretty good value receiver. I think Laviska Shenault looks really good as well. Only 4,500. It just seems like, you know, every week he's starting to get more and more involved in this, you know, Jaguars offense. They're going to give him rushing attempts, like they'll give him end arounds. I've even seen a few plays where he actually lines up at running back, lines up behind the, you know, quarterback. So I really like Laviska Shenault at 4,500. I think there's a lot of upside for him this week against a very beatable Texans secondary. Another game that is very likely to shoot out. Another game with a high total. Like, if you're stacking up Watson and Fuller, I think my favorite run back from the Jaguar side is for sure going to be Laviska Shenault. I think at 4,500, he looks like a really good play. It was pretty close between Shenault or Slayton on who I wanted to go with. You know, I think both guys look like really good values. I think for now, with plug-in Darius Slayton, especially because we have Zeke, so we're getting that, you know, positive correlation, running it back with someone on the Giants side. But I like both those guys a lot as value plays. I think Slayton at 4,800, Shenault at 4,500. Both those guys, you know, look like two of the better cheap options at receiver under 5K. And then I do want to talk about, you know, this guy from the Falcons. I honestly can't pronounce his name. I think it's Olamide Zaccheaus, I think that's how you say it. So he is the stone minimum on DraftKings. He's only 3K. Last week, with Julio going down, that obviously helped Zaccheaus a ton. Had 8 catches for 86 yards on 9 targets against the Packers. If Julio does not play this week, I think Zaccheaus is for sure going to be, you know, a guy that I look to. Only 3K, the stone minimum. It is going to be very hard for him to fail at this salary. I would assume that he's going to be their number 3 receiver. You know, he'll be behind Russell Gage. He'll be behind Calvin Ridley. But they have been getting him involved. You know, he's been playing way more snaps, getting more looks. Julio, obviously, this is going to be dependent on Julio's status. If he's out, I do like Zaccheaus a good amount. If Julio plays, probably can't go to Zaccheaus, just going to be too risky. But we'll have to keep an eye on Julio's status. If he does wind up out, I will definitely be on Zaccheaus. Stone minimum 3K. Could be in cash game consideration. Because if you pay down for him, you know, really in cash games, all you're going to need is like maybe 9-10 points from him. If he can give you that, you know, paying down for him at 3K is going to allow you to get in, you know, Zeke, Kareem Hunt, CEH. Might even allow you to pay up a quarterback if you do want to go that route. Could still pay up for Ridley as well. So definitely like Zaccheaus as a punt play if Julio does wind up out this week. But I think that's kind of it for receiver. Let's go ahead and hit on tight end real quick just before we end the video. So at tight end this week, I think there's, you know, plenty of viable options at the top. I think if I was going to pay up, George Kittle is my favorite option this week. He's coming off a monster game on Sunday night against the Eagles. Had 15 catches on 15 targets, 183 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, George Kittle is just a complete monster. Whether it's Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, Jimmy Garoppolo, like, it doesn't matter who's behind center or who's at quarterback. I mean, George Kittle is going to put up numbers. He's going to get massive volume. He's clearly the number 1 receiver on this team right now. Even with Debo, you know, coming back, it's still Kittle that's going to get, you know, the most targets most weeks. So really like George Kittle. Against the Dolphins is obviously a really good spot for him. I think at 6,600, I do slightly prefer him over Travis Kelce. I think Kelce is for sure in play against the Raiders, but I would rather go to Kittle if I just had to choose one. I think Darren Waller looks really good against the Chiefs. Very likely that, the Raiders are going to be playing from behind in this game, and we see, Darren Waller get double-digit targets like he got week 4, like he got in week 2. I mean, whenever the Raiders are playing from behind, like, they will just feed Waller, get him a ton of looks. He is clearly the number 1 pass catcher on this Raiders team. Like, they've been dealing with injuries with their receivers. I know Henry Ruggs was out last week. Brian Edwards was out last week. I think Ruggs is going to be back this week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Ruggs is going to be back this week. I think Edwards might still be out, or he's questionable right now. He was sidelined at Wednesday's practice, so I guess we'll have to monitor that. Even if Edwards plays, that doesn't really move the needle too much for me. I definitely like Darren Waller against the Chiefs. I think there's plenty of upside for him in a game where they will, likely be playing from behind and forced to throw a lot. Definitely like Kittle and Waller at the top if you are paying up. But we do have some good value at tight end, under 5K. I think Dalton Schultz at 4,800 makes a lot of sense. Just getting, good volume right now with Blake Jarwin on IR. Obviously he is their number 1 tight end now. Dalton Schultz is their number 1 tight end. Week 2 got 10 targets. Week 3, 6 targets, 8 targets. Like, he is getting a ton of work in the passing game. Obviously, with them playing from behind these last few weeks and, Dak throwing the ball 50 times, that has obviously helped Dalton Schultz. But he's still clearly the number 1 tight end. I like the matchup against the Giants. Very likely that this game shoots out. We see a lot of points scored here. I definitely have interest in Schultz at 4,800. I think Hayden Hurst is fine as well against the Panthers. I think he gets a little bit of a bump if Julio winds up out. On the other side of that Cowboys game, I think Evan Ingram looks really good at 4,600. He's probably my favorite value tight end overall. Like, his volume is just so secure in this offense. I know he hasn't put up a big game yet, but he's had some really, really tough matchups. Now he gets a really good spot against the Cowboys. Obviously, the best matchup that the Giants have had so far this season. Like we said earlier, this game has very high shootout potential. If the Giants can put up points, like, we could see this game definitely go over the total. 54 total, I believe. Yeah, it's got a 54 total right now. If the Giants can put up points, I think it's probably likely that goes over the total. I really like Evan Ingram at 4,600. This is still one of the top receiving tight ends in the league. Going to run a ton of routes. Going to be on the field a ton. Going to get the volume. And for 4,600, that's just too cheap for a matchup against the Cowboys and a likely shootout. So, love Evan Ingram. I think he's probably my favorite tight end overall when you do factor in salary. Eric Ebron I think is fine as well at 4K if you want to just punt the position, go really cheap. I think if I had the salary, I'd probably rather get up to, Evan Ingram. I think he gives you a little bit more upside. But, Ebron's fine at 4K. But I think that's really it for tight end. I think we kind of covered, all the guys that really stand out to me this week. I think we broke it all down, quarterback through tight end, touched on each position. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I do really appreciate you watching. If you did enjoy, just hit that like button before you do get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy my videos, if they really help you, I have more content available on Patreon. You can check that out, link down below in the description. You can see all that I do have to offer on Patreon. Get access to my NFL content, my updated core plays. I do post final core plays on Patreon Sunday morning. So if you want to get access to those, you can check everything out, link down below in the description. But yeah, best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next video. Good luck this week, guys. Peace.